Welcome to the Leadership by Design podcast, where thoughtful leaders share lessons from their journey. I'm Dave Adams, founder of the Business Freedom Group, and today I'm very happy to have Gene Furr, who works, I think, not only as a benefits consultant, but also a bit of a leader, a manager for the Alera Group. So, welcome, Gene. I'd love to start off with you telling our audience a little bit about yourself, your company, and your journey.
All right, very well. Hello, everybody. My name is Gene Furr. I'm a benefits consultant, employee benefits consultant. What that means is I design, implement, and maintain benefit programs for businesses that have up to 200 employees, let's say. Been doing that for about 15 years now. Been in the industry for over 25 years.
Great. Well, it's an impressive journey, and I'm sure lots of hard work along the way. So
Had a lot of fun.
Yeah, great. So what trends are you currently seeing in both your industry and that are affecting your customers?
Yes, like with every other industry, it seems like there's a big drive to improve profits. So we're seeing a lot of businesses, insurance agencies consolidating. So a lot of mergers and acquisitions really designed to improve the bottom line through expense consolidation and streamlining of processes. And of course, everywhere seems to be trying to implement some type of AI type of system in order to, again, streamline processes and improve efficiencies. So with these trends, we're seeing new processes, many different types of processes, sometimes adjustments to processes. They're just simple things like that, relatively saving steps of what was done manually. Our industry is one where, because there's so many different insurance carriers involved, they all have their different systems. It's been very difficult to have one type of a system that works with all of them. Over the years, there were CRMs that were developed in order to help connect what we do with what the carriers do. So we're seeing some changes with that as well, but those not as large of leaps of advancement that we've seen with some other items, such as we might find through AI. Now, some of the teams, we've spun up a number of teams, I should say, that have helped streamline some of these processes and are looking into AI, for example. This has been really good for us. We're getting a chance for these employees to see what it's like to really break down their jobs, their tasks, and how that might improve, the system and our company overall. I think they're very much enthusiastic about that. But it's additional work, it's a project within your normal workflow. So that can be a little bit of a challenge.
Right, right. And how do you see AI's impact on the employers that you're serving?
It's one of those things, we haven't seen it all yet. We're still developing it. What we're looking to do is to provide more services and services that are efficient as well as, effective. So quickly getting information out to businesses is one thing, but they have to be worthy. They have to be something that the client is looking for and that they're interested in. And there's a lot of differences from one client to the next. Everyone has different needs. You start to develop kind of a pattern. You might see some that are very cost conscientious. You're going to see some that are concerned about the quality of their benefits, and then you're going to see some that have others and multiples of those different options. So developing an AI tool or process to fit all of that's going to be difficult to kind of stitch it together one item at a time. Mostly right now, our AI processes are for more internal types of challenges you might have. We're looking at the different ways we can use AI to put together proposals and presentations and develop good information in that sense.
Great. Thank you. And, when you're working with a lot of company leaders and they're concerned about their employees and their benefits, what sort of behaviors do you see that sort of shine as far as what we should all aspire to be as leaders?
Okay. I love that question, because what a times when I'm working with a business, I have to be thinking about who I'm talking with. A decision maker, there's a couple different types of decision makers. I might be speaking with an HR manager, human resources manager, who's in charge of their total rewards program, benefits. I also might be speaking with a chief financial officer. Each of them have their own awareness of what the benefits programs might be doing. based on their particular skill set. The chief financial officer often really focusing on the bottom line and what's it going to cost, whereas someone who's in HR is going to be thinking about cost maybe with respect to their time and how they're going to be utilizing the program. So when I'm making a presentation to a CFO, we're going to be looking at the bottom line and those costs and how this might affect their business from that perspective. And then the opposite side from the utilization of personnel when I'm speaking with HR.
And one thing I've heard you talk about before is the impact of benefits on turnover, which I
Mm.
imagine is sort of, it doesn't really show up necessarily on the CFO radar screen, right?
Often it doesn't. It's one that we have to bring to their attention. We ask in our when we're doing a deep dive, where we ask, we're trying to get information from the business about their turnover. How
Mhm.
many have they hired? How many people have terminated? Trying to get an idea of what that turnover is, and then put a figure to it as to
Mhm.
what the actual cost is, the time it takes to train them. We have to gather that information typically from HR, whereas the CFO may not have that. But some of them do. Some of them have that kind of experience and have that kind of communication with their HR department. But once you're able to present it in that manner, then you have to look at, hey, is this going to be worth the spend for benefits in order to save that expense and having to retrain someone, to having to find the right person, all of that that it takes to spin up a new employee to make them productive, the decrease in productivity that you had initially as a result of that turnover. In many cases, you can make that case, especially if you're looking at it over a period of time, which you should be, it tends to pan out. You spend what you need if that was the reason for the turnover. Now, again, it could be other reasons for the turnover. It might not be benefits. There are
Mhm.
some businesses that have a high population of lower income earners that will actually be inclined to move for 50 cents more an hour. To them, benefits aren't that important, but
Mhm.
for businesses that have a professional base of employees, the benefits are really critical. Absolutely. So, I've had been in business a long time, so I've had many mentors over the years. It's a blessing to have had the experience of many people pouring into me their experience, and I enjoy that opportunity to give that back to many. Too many actually to mention. But when I first started, I was more concerned about trying to connect with businesses and just find the product that they need and give it to them. And the more time that I spent within the industry, and because of the leaders talking to me and sharing with me their experiences, I realized how important it is to see my clients and get them the perspective of me as their advisor, to put myself in their shoes at all time. And this is something that I've learned from my church. Servant leadership is sacrifice, humility, and compassion. So make sure that my clients feel that in me, then I know that I'll be successful.
And what do you see in them that tells you you've succeeded at being the type of leader for them that you want to be?
Trust is really the first part of it. So they're able to see that I'm in it not just for me, I'm in it for them. The way we follow up with them to make sure that solution that we've offered has actually solved the problem, that we're in it not just for a particular transaction, that we're there with them the entire process. We become a partner. It's different than what a lot of other advisors do in our business. That's just the way that I've learned how to work with my clients. It gives me a sense of value when I'm able to do that. I feel good
Mhm.
about what I've done, and it's a great opportunity then when you feel in a business good for what you're doing. It helps you sleep well at night.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I find that often when an error is made, whether by the leader or by someone else, how someone deals with an error being made is a great indicator of what type of leader they are.
Mhm.
I'm wondering, do you have a story from your career where you took a risk and it didn't work out and you had to clean it up or something along those lines?
Yeah, there's been a few. I mean, I've been in business for a long time, so there's been a few mistakes I've made. The first thing I learned many years ago was it's important to let a client or a prospect know what you don't know. Be honest with them, open. I don't believe that they expect you to know everything. But what that means is when you're able to point out to them, yeah, I don't know this answer, is it puts you on the spot. Are you able to get the answer? And I think it also shows them that you care, that you care enough to be honest with them and say, yeah, I don't know it, but I'm going to find out and I'm going to let you know because I need to know myself because there's going to be others that are going to be asking that question. With my business, our agency is fortunate enough we have expertise in all these fields and disciplines. I have a team of people that I can call on a number of different items that I may not be aware of that can give me the information that I can share with my prospects and my clients. Specifically, have particular examples. I had a couple of situations where we thought a particular employee was covered, enrolled in benefits, and they weren't. There was a miscommunication issue, becomes an error on my part. Then what am I able to do about it? Because of the business that we've done in the past with carriers, I've been able to get them re-enrolled or enrolled in one particular case so that there were claims that were covered. But being honest, and saying, hey, my bad, I messed this one up myself. Let me see if I can fix it. That's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also like your I don't know message. I have personally survived a lot of corporate speech 23B, and it's like, come on. Let's be real.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. Where do you think the opportunities are for people to, you talked about servant leadership and that being mentioned in your church as well as finding it in your life. What sort of advice would you give someone to step into being a servant leader?
It starts with, how do you want to be treated? Everybody has an experience when they're working in a service industry of, a good experience and a bad experience. And if you get them to think about more about that experience, they can pretty much tell you, well, this was good because of this, and this was bad because of this. So how do I make that part of my lifestyle so that I can do the good stuff? And it really boils down to how do you want to be treated? So and then I tell them to think about it even further. Think about if you were working to take care of a solution for a family member, for your brother, your sister, or maybe your parents, how would you treat them? In a good relationship, hopefully you would treat them very well, right? So
Yeah.
you want to be open and honest with them. You'd want to make sure that their particular problem was acknowledged, the proper solution developed and taken care of, actually implemented, and that you're there with them the entire process. I think when people are able to look at it from that perspective, first internally, what has been my experience with good and bad service, then they can take that and follow that with their particular clients or prospects.
Oh, great. And I see in your background that you spent quite a bit of time as a scout master. So
Yeah.
we're all children inside, and so I'm tempted to ask, what lessons did you learn in scouting that have carried over to your business life and your
Oh, so many in scouting. Let's see where to start with that. One of the things that always comes to mind is preparation. I was working with a patrol leader, and they were telling me that their job was to actually design the program for that particular day. And we had a debriefing at the end of the meeting, and I asked him, how do you think it went? And he said to me, I think it went really well, which it did. It actually had come out very well. But then he said, and I didn't even prepare for it. And we talked about that, and I tried to make sure the young man was aware that you got lucky. If you
yeah.
didn't prepare for it and it worked out well, you got lucky, but you can't count on luck. You have to prepare so that when things fail, you can maybe rely on luck, but you prepare even more and you prepare for the failure. So never trust luck.
You've seen certain leadership inside the organizations you've been part of, and also by working with leaders outside the organization, you've seen leadership in a whole variety of contexts. So, what would you say, have you learned sort of internally inside your organizations versus externally? Is there a difference? there of what you've learned and what you've seen?
Yeah, there's different things that I've learned over the years. So internally in our agency, we've done a lot of merging. So we brought in a number of different agencies to create a larger, more capable agency with specialties and expertise in a number of different markets and fields. And because of that, we've had, initial coming together is different because each agency has their own culture. They have their own ways of doing things. So you can go to the new systems, similar systems now, and everyone works from the same system, and that's all good and well. And that takes a little bit of time. That's obvious. But then there's the how do we treat each other? How do we learn to dance together? How do we learn to trust each other? Our company started working on a process called the collaborative way. And how do we work better together as an agency? And it starts first with listening. It's real
Mhm.
easy to want to tell somebody something, but it's more important to listen and hear what they're talking about. Understand that from where their perspective is, what their experience is. And then once you hear that, then you're able to evaluate. A lot of times you want to make sure you get your point across and you're thinking about how you're going to respond before you actually finish listening. And that becomes a problem. We do encourage, okay, now that I've heard you, let me give you my point of view and having direct conversation. And that's sometimes people aren't used to that. They're not used to being able to say, I hear what you're saying. Now here's my opinion. But when you speak of that, you're speaking of making sure everything is out in the open to be discussed. And then the other part of it is, okay, now we have to consider each of those. And we need to see where the strengths and weaknesses are of each of those points so that we can benefit the company, benefit our agency, which ultimately benefits our clients. So that's been a very important process within our company. Everyone goes through this little course called the collaborative way, where we learn how to work together. And I think that's a really good way to kind of bring together people from different perspectives when you're all kind of pushed together at one time.
Well, so I love your description of that, and you talked about listening and somehow disengaging your automatic response generation that
Mhm.
happens before they've finished talking. So any tips on how to do that, on how to put that engine in neutral and really listen?
Um, I mean, it starts with that, right? So if I'm talking with someone and I feel that they have some experience that I don't have, they've witnessed things, they've seen things, they've been exposed to things. My first thought should be they've got something to talk about. I
Mhm.
don't know what that is. I need to know so that I can then speak to that based on my own experience. But if you come in from the position that you do know everything, that your ways is the best way without even seeing what else is around you, that's not going to work. So you have to be a bit more humble, perhaps, than what you may have wanted to be.
Yeah, yeah. From my experience, I would say that the the mate to humility is respect.
True.
I grew up inside factory environments where I had to interface with and get the valuable stuff out of people who weren't as smooth or rapid fire as my communication, but they had important stuff to say.
Everybody is important when you look at the total process because everyone has a job, everyone has a role, and that's why they're there. And without them there to support me, without me to support them, it's not going to work. So they have input because of that experience and their role.
I think, that's a great summary of our entire discussion, the interplay of humility and respect. So thank you, Gene. It was a real pleasure to speak to you today. And for our listeners, thanks again for tuning in to Leadership by Design and keeping your leadership thinking fresh with lessons from thoughtful leaders like Gene. So we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Dave.